So a few years ago, executives were asking, should we adopt AI? That question went away. Today, the questions are very different. What's happened when your competitors become autonomous before you do? Because the next wave of AI is not going to be about chatbots. It's not going to be about copilots or even productivity tools, right? It's an emergence of autonomous systems capable of executing workflows, orchestrating decisions, operating at an enterprise scale. Yet despite billions of dollars that we are investing in all of this, how many of us are really, really successful in getting it done? Most of us are stuck in, just in pilot stages. Some of them move to the next level. But do we really have a plan in hand? The challenge is not going to be about whether you have access to technology anymore. Everyone has access. Everyone's got whatever technology we need. The question is, how are you using it? How successfully are you able to create that environment within your organizations to really transform them? Do we have a roadmap in terms of our business users being able to understand what technology means to them? Are we able to create that environment with our HR or with our execs who understand what that technology is, make it more productive, make it more useful going forward? So this is where we really are. And this is the kind of things that we really, really need to address as we keep going ahead, right? So as we enter into this autonomous area, one of the most important things that we're going to be looking at is how do we digitally capture the data and the repository around it. Now, most of the time when the organizations start working on AI, what they really forget is how clean your data is or how hygiene your data is, right? That's where the problem starts. And we all know that terminology, junk in, junk out, right? So you really need to focus on really cleaning up your data, having that business case very clearly defined in terms of what you're going to be executing, and then move forward. So we had rule-based RPAs, we did workflow engines. Now we moved more into predictive insights, decision support, and that's the place where most of the organizations are at this point of time, right? We're using a lot of data. There's a lot of reporting coming out of the business, right, for the business to use that. How intelligent are we using it? Well, maybe to a great extent, yes, we do know that. But have we moved to the next stage? And what is that? It's the autonomous AI part of it, which is self-executing, self-learning systems that we have. And you can take examples of companies like Zepto or Blinkit, Amazon, to be very honest, where these examples are really, really being used. These cases are really, really being used, right? So let's take an example of Mumbai. I mean, I'm a Mumbaikar by heart. It's a rainy season. It's beautifully raining in Mumbai. What do people need? Cutting chai, vada pav, right? Or a pav bhaji. What happens to your Zomato and your Swiggies at that point of time when you open up? All of a sudden, you'll start seeing these recommendations. Where are these recommendations coming from? It's exactly where it's coming from. You have your Rapidos in Bangalore and your Olas over here. The moment it's the peak hours or it starts raining, what happens to your pricing? Starts shooting up, right? So that's exactly what we're talking about over here. Again, this is the third way of AI that we are looking at. We're moving away from analytics. We're moving away from automation on a day-to-day process. That's all done, dusted with, and over with. What we really need now is agentic workflows and independent executions. And you need to have systems that can reason, plan, and act by themselves, right? We're all talking about workforces becoming more and more productive on a day-to-day basis, right? How do you do that? The only way to do that is start having your processes well-defined. Start looking at those business cases and start small. I think the other big mistake that most of the organizations start making is, you're going to try and solve very, very big problems. The moment you do that, you're going to start failing. So it's very important that you define your business cases, make them smaller. Have smaller teams really working and focus teams working on it, and you'll start seeing more better results around that. like I said before also, technology is no longer the bottleneck. Enterprise engineering, which is the model capability, grows exponentially. Production deployments remain stagnant in pilot purgatory. So again, coming back to the same point, move out of the pilot stages, right? And have a more focus. Look, what I have realized over the last few years is, you'll have your CEOs also talking about AI. You'll also have your CXOs coming and saying, oh, can I do this and can I do that? The question is, have we defined what that business case is, or what are we really, really trying to achieve at the end of it, right? So have that roadmap very clearly defined, and I assure you that every one of us are going to win over here. Most importantly, I think don't keep it at the top level. You need to have more design thinking workshops down the line, because it's those guys who are actually going to use the systems. We can sit in our boardrooms and say, we're going to achieve this by doing AI. But the question is, the guy down there, how aligned is he in terms of what are we trying to achieve? Again, this is where most of these AI initiatives stall. You'll have your models, you'll have your agents, you'll have your co-pilots. All of us have that, right? But this is what is really going to determine your success. Your architecture, most importantly, your data foundation. System integration is extremely important because most of us have a lot of legacy systems, right? We're stuck with hundreds of legacies. How many of y'all have more than 50 to 70 legacy systems in your organization? Let's see a show of hands. There you go. So many of y'all, right? How do you start getting rid of those legacy systems? How many of y'all think y'all have the budgets to start saying, I want to get out of this system? No, I don't see a single hand up now. And that's a problem for most of the CIOs over here. Organizations will come and tell you, I want to put AI. The next thing, when you go with your budgets, they'll say, oh, there's no money. Why do you need money for AI? It's all cheap. Everything is in the cloud, right? And, well, cloud is not cheap nowadays anyways, right? So the question is, look at your system architecture, your data architecture. What are the systems that make sense for you? Which are the old legacy systems you need to get rid of? And how do you start planning new agentic systems around that and have a roadmap around it, right? Because at the end of the day, you still need to look at your operating costs. You still need to look at your CapExes. And no matter what the organization say, you're not going to get the money which the business is going to get. So you've got to balance it out somewhere over there. And the most important thing, which is right there in the end, which is the change management part of it, right? It's very important in an organization over a period of time to have a change management process in place. And which also means have an AI governance structure in place, right? Which really defines how the data is coming, where is the data going. I come from a retail environment. One of the things that's going to become very, very important for a lot of CPG players, retail players, etc., is going to be about the DPDP Act that the government has come up with, right? In terms of how your data is leaking, where is it moving out, and how responsibly are you managing all of that. So if you don't have a change management process in place, then you're in a big trouble over a period of time. This is where most of the organizations are. You start with initiations, so you have someone working on it, executives are helping it out. There's a lot of tasks which are happening in the organization, but the focus is really on individual productivity, right? What happens in the autonomous era or in the future is it's the AI which initiates the workflow. It executes things independently, but the humans still come into the picture for managing the outcomes, right? So it's not that, when people talk about, is AI really going to take away jobs? I don't think so. I don't think that can ever happen, right? AI is never going to take away jobs. It's going to recalibrate a lot of jobs for us. And that is what people need to understand. So when organizations are scared about using AI, I don't think that should be the worry. The worry should be, how are we using it? How are we adapting it? And how are we changing the course of this organization with these technologies? And in the end, you'll see the enterprise yield, right? You will see a clear change in terms of how the organization grows in the future, right? So from doing the work to delivering outcomes is what the motivation really should be for every organization. Um, Again, if you look at the enterprise stack, let's start with the intelligence part. So you'll have multiple, models and layer foundations which are there. You've got your LLMs, you've got your SLMs, providing core restoring, reasoning capabilities in the organization. Then you start setting the context in terms of enterprise knowledge graphs and real-time data fabric providing, business context. And this is where we use a lot of our data for our day-to-day work, right? But again, you start having these runtime guardrails, policy enforcement becomes very, very important. And like I said, ethical alignment as far as infrastructure is concerned. And when I say infrastructure, I don't mean your servers and the cloud, but overall as an organization, what's the infrastructure setup that you have to start using these technologies? And the execution part of it across different transaction systems that you have. Another question that I want to ask over here is, how many of you all have actually implemented it well and then re-looked at what should be the success statement of that particular AI? Can I have a show of hands here? Just one. Which means you're implementing AI, but you don't know what the outcome is, right? Define that outcome. Define the success of what you're trying to do. Most of the implementations, we say we want to do this, we implement it, but then there's nobody really governing it. So what's going to be the next step after that? Nobody knows. We all go and talk about it and say, oh, what a great implementation I did. Were you clear in terms of how well that went? I doubt it, right? So have the readiness gap looked into. The industry survey really shows that the governance readiness lab in the AI deployment is one of those biggest loops that we have, and not just in terms of policy manuals, etc. So real-time policy enforcement and automated adaptability is what we're really, really looking at over here. So please make a note of that. Again, it's the economics which will decide the winners. If you look at the legacy ROI systems that we had, the success ratio was 1.2 in terms of the ROI that we got. The AI adapters started getting 1.5x ROIs. But if you look at the autonomous leaders over here, it's 4.5x ROI against the technology investments that you make. So it's a huge leap in terms of the kind of output that the organizations are going to get by using such technology. And that's a huge scale. That's a huge paradigm shift in terms of the returns of investment that you get by putting money in these investments. Different native operating models that one needs to look at, right, to start adapting for the markets in the real-time shift. A big change. AI adapters, all you're going to do is end up deploying tools and pilots. You're going to be measuring activities, trying to look at seat counts. Nothing more than that, and then isolated implementations and experiment groups that you have. But what an AI leader is really going to do is redesign enterprise architecture. And when I said that, I don't mean from the systems perspective, I mean from an organization perspective. You start measuring outcomes and unit margins and operationalize at scale. Very, very important for any large organization now to have those setups in the organization where you're not only talking AI, you're breathing AI within the system. Every system upgrade that you think about doing now, you need to start looking at, is it AI enabled or is it not AI enabled? Because if you're just shifting from one tech to another and not really looking at AI, trust me, your competitor already is out there. And so by the time you finish your meetings in the office, someone's already taken actions, right? And that's a big shift that's going to happen now. We need to understand that. And with newer, smaller players coming into the market who don't have legacy as something to take care of, they're just going to use technology and move forward. This is the leadership playbook that I would recommend for everyone. Just consume this data from your perspective and take this forward, right? So a question everyone needs to ask is, will AI remain a technology initiative, or will it become an operating model of the enterprise? That's the defining question of 2026 that all of us need to answer. And yes, again, the winners of the next decade will not simply use AI. They're going to be engineered to operate it, and with it, at that very core of the business. With that, I would try to close my opening statement today. I hope you guys have a great summit, and you have a great day going forward.